Welcome back to Rawthentic. Holy crap, I can't believe that this day has come. I can't even explain the joy that I feel just like being able to be back on this platform and connecting with everybody again. It's been, it's been 5 years since I first started Rawthentic. And so much has changed since then, like everything. Not only from where I was in my life when I started that, but also the fact that I've spent a year and a half off of social media altogether and just everything that I have learned and I'm still learning and processing and just the place that I'm in now. And just, yeah, I'm happy to be back, happy to share the journey that I've been on and kind of give you a little bit of taste into my world and what I've been up to and the wisdom that I've taken from it that I think could help a lot of you. And, back 5 years ago when I created Rawthentic, I created it from a place of excitement, but also from a place of pressure. I was at the height of my coaching career. I was working with clients, I was coaching full time. And I wanted a way to really connect and help people. And I wanted a way to share my story, but it came with certain like structure or rules that, it just felt funny that I called the podcast Rawthentic, but I was kind of confining myself into this box of what that looked like. So, going back and just really reflecting on that journey, it was coming from a good place. The intention to start the podcast, which I think is no different from why I'm starting it now, but the way in which I moved then and the way in which I plan to move now is completely different. And so that mindset was about I have to put out a certain amount of episodes per week. It has to be, polished and perfect and whatever, which is ironic considering, again, the name of the podcast was Rawthentic. And I'm doing it a little bit different this time. And I hope that, you'll stick with me along the journey because it is an experiment. But, I'm coming in, there's not going to be any editing, any filtering, any nothing. Just all of me and the stories of the things that I've been through, as well as stories of others, and how that can inspire you to really take a look at what is not working in your life and make changes. So, yeah, that version of myself back then was someone who was excited, but someone who was also very much worried about what other people would think and had a lot of pressure, and I think now I'm in a place where, because I have taken a year and a half off of social media, it's really given me a fresh perspective on what matters most. And that's really to connect and to be yourself, because when you are authentic and share that part of yourself, unfiltered and without fear, that is really when you build that true connection. So I'm so happy that you guys are here with me, and I hope that you stick along with me in this journey and that, I can help just one person. That's always my goal. But I want to get into more of like why I stepped away in general. I talked a little bit about the podcast and when I launched it 5 years ago and how it just felt very like I had to do it and there was a lot of pressure. And my whole goal with leaving my 9 to 5 and going full time into coaching was to take that pressure off of myself and really just live in flow and live in authenticity of what felt good to me and not putting any rules or parameters on what that looked like. And so, when I decided to take a step back from social media about a year and a half ago, it was the premise of getting back into myself and getting more present and kind of clearing out all of the noise, clearing out all of the ways in which I was seeing how things should be done, but not living true to myself. And in a later episode, I'll probably share, but I was also in a very unhealthy relationship that basically made me feel like I could not share all the parts of myself. And I could not share, the full, raw, authentic side of myself. So over the last year and a half or so, or 2 years, I had really shrank myself really, really down into a person that I didn't recognize. And this is my way of like showing up and showing up fully, allowing myself to be seen and allowing my truth and my message to come across, because I think it's really important that people know that, it can be scary sometimes to be fully yourself, but it is the only way, in my opinion. And yeah, so I just learned a lot of lessons and have done a lot of reflecting. And I want to share, some of the things that I really realized over the last year and a half of not being on social media, and what my intention is moving forward into connecting and helping as many people that I can to just really live their truth. I think one of the biggest things I realized recently is how much I've outgrown the person that I thought that I was. I thought that I was this person that, had it all together, or at least I could, I guess, like fake it till you make it and, show up and show that I had it all together. But realistically, like, I was having so many different identity deaths at the same time that I just didn't know really how to process through that in a very public way. And while I'm still growing and learning and going through more identity deaths, and, those are all for the better, I want to share it in real time and share the struggles, share the journey, share the lessons, and just the wisdom that I've acquired from everything that I've experienced. And, not feeling that pressure to have it all figured out, I think is something that I've always strived to embody. And I feel like I'm at a place now where I feel really good about that. None of us have it all together. And the perceived success that you see on the outside very rarely represents what's going on in the internal world. And, while I feel like I have reached a level of success, and success obviously is different for everybody, there are a lot of times where I feel like I am out of alignment still, and that I'm not living in my truth and purpose. And that's a big reason why, I've just decided to show up and to really speak that here, because I believe that this platform is very powerful. And not only is it a way for me to creatively express myself and my truth and process, but again, it's for you. It's for people that are on the same path or on a similar path or journey, and they might be experiencing the same things. But, it's always nice to know when someone that you perceive as having their stuff together also is having some struggles as well. So yeah, stepping away from social media, that year and a half, like I said, I wanted to be more present. I wanted to block out the noise. I wanted to focus on myself, but really I suppose I was blocking out the noise, but really what I found that it was happening is I was really just dimming myself and shrinking myself. And, fear of what other people will think and fear of judgment, those are very real things for all of us. I don't know if there's ever really a point in life where, you fully outgrow that. I think that you just get better at navigating it and reminding yourself that, like, those people's perceptions of you are not based in any reality. And it's not your job to have everyone understand you or have everyone like you. And, the people that get you will get you, or the people that want to take the time to understand you will, and you're not for everybody. But I think that coming from the very unhealthy relationship that I was in, I really just was like not sure of who I was anymore. I wasn't sure what was okay to say or do or be. There was so many parameters and confinements in that relationship that it really caused me to almost lose myself. I think the last 4 or 5 months or so has been like a true journey of coming home to myself. And there's been a lot of personal growth in the entire time I have been away, but these past 5 months have been just really eye-opening in, what my purpose is in the world and how I was not living in that. And just a reminder to, heal and let go and redefine, what it is that I do want to create and what it is I want to help people with and how I want to connect and how I want to show up. And there are periods of times where, we do kind of go back and hide, and, we have those fears, and those are super real. That desire that we all have for belonging and connection. And, the threat of that is really scary. And I've made a vow to myself, moving forward, to not make decisions out of fear, out of scarcity, or out of what could happen if, this doesn't work out. And that's why I decided to go back on social media. And that's why I decided to relaunch this podcast, because, all of the hesitations and fears I had, leading up to it were all rooted in things that either I had experienced in the past when I was a different version of myself, or it was fears that were rooted in things that could and probably will happen, but that isn't something that I want to stop me from pursuing. It's something that I love. Every day, the past year and a half or more, I visualize myself, connecting with other women, with other men, sharing stories, swapping wisdom and lessons, and, just empowering the collective in general, and just empowering people to think differently and get out of your own way. And just to realize that, like, we are all the same when it comes to our basic needs and our basic fears. Like, we are no different. And so, a step towards that and living in alignment with what this podcast is about is being raw, is being authentic, and is doing things that scare the crap out of you, So I really am just excited to pursue this path of creativity and, connection with everyone that I come in contact with on this platform, and just have this be a blank canvas and like a new seasons of beginning, focused on my journey and how I can help others. So what pulled me back into really wanting to do this was, those visualizations that I would have every time I'd meditate, of just wanting to speak. One of my dreams is to speak on stage and do like a TEDx talk. And along with making decisions that, are not rooted in fear. So not choosing to not do something because of fear, but doing it anyway. Another goal of mine is to practice, refining skills and doing things that make me uncomfortable. And, I recently started dance classes, and it's something I've always wanted to do. And it's been such a joy, but uncomfortable for me, because dance is also one of those things where growing up, I watched all these different like dance shows and like America's Best Dance Crew, and So You Think You Could Dance, and I followed all of the dancers on Instagram, and I was like, man, I wish I could like move my body like that, but I feel so like embarrassed and like silly doing this. But I'm like, you know what, F it, like I'm gonna do this. I've always wanted to do it. It's that like recurring thing that just continues to show up in my mind. And I think like if you have something that is constantly coming up in your mind that you can't stop thinking about, that you've been wanting to do but you just haven't, like, you just have to do it because it is on your heart and your mind for a reason. And so, deciding to sign up for dance classes has been super awesome. I've only done a few, but it's been super rewarding. I bought a piano and started learning piano, and that's been a little over a year. And then, with the speaking, I've invested in a course to get better about speaking and like hone my skills in on that with storytelling and all that. So I think this is also not only a platform to connect and help others, but to practice speaking, because it just feels really, really in alignment when I do. And so just being able to look back and reflect on where I started to where I will grow into will be super fulfilling for me. So yeah, I think that, that is the main reason why I got pulled back into this, is it was just on my heart, on my mind consistently. And also, I'm working a job right now that provides me the lifestyle and flexibility to live that I've always prayed for, but it doesn't allow me a lot of creative expression. And I've had so much energy just like wanting to be expressed that I'm just like, how can I get this energy out in a way that's productive where it's not just sitting in my body? And this was one of the outlets that I had been, just really looking forward to diving back into. And I think that, this idea of authenticity is just something that the world needs more of. I've been away from the social media lens for a year and a half and kind of out of the loop, if you will. But I know that, a lot of us still live this filtered highlight reel life. And I think it's important to show the world and get a glimpse inside of someone's real life where they can share, the hard times, the challenges, the struggles, and everything in between. And just, again, encourage people to live a life more authentic, because in my opinion, when you live more authentically, you are able to have such depth in your connections with others and in with yourself. And I will get into it, I'm sure, about, when your body is not feeling in alignment, when you're energetically misaligned, and how that shows up in authenticity. And so, yeah, this matters a lot. And I think we need more of it. And, I've had people in my life that have really inspired me that I feel most connected to when I know that they're fully showing up as themselves. So yeah, so I'm not going to say that I'm going to record a podcast episode every single week or every other week, but what I will promise to you is that I will continue to show up and share, my journey as I'm going through it in real time, and, all of the things that go along with it that I hope, can help you along the way as well and can help you relate. So yeah, I realized, starting this podcast, it's never about having it be perfect or having it look a certain way, but really just sharing, just showing up. And so what you can expect from me throughout this process is lifestyle updates and personal in the moment. I wouldn't call them rants, but realizations, because I do have those a lot, that I think, getting them out not only helps me process, but again, if it can help one person, then that is my goal. But also, stories with friends of mine and people that I really look up to and their journey through the struggles and the hard times of living an authentic life, living a courageous life, and stepping into, their most powerful self, and the challenges that they've had along the way with, pressure and judgment and, burnout and identity deaths and upgrades. So I think it's important not just to share my story, but to share, the stories of others. But I just invite you that if you are listening to this and you feel like you are in a season of rediscovering yourself, you are not alone. And I'm here to share with you that, Rawthentic is back. And this is a space for women who are done shrinking, done settling, and ready to just live their lives fully expressed without fear, or maybe not without fear, but without letting fear stop them. So thank you for being here, and here is to beginning again.